Welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman. Today we have a great interview with Sarah and Brad. They talk about their blogging journey starting in 2016 when they launched their first site. They've been listening to the Niche Pursuits podcast actually for several years prior to that, had dabbled in a couple of different online ways of making money from selling products online and a variety of other sources, but landed on starting a blog in a niche that they were experts in. Sarah was an occupational therapist, and so she started a blog with Brad all about helping occupational therapists. And so we go through the journey that it started with in 2016 all the way up to today, where the site is making over $5,000 a month consistently. And Sarah's been able, actually, as of just a couple weeks ago, to leave her job and go full-time into the website world. They talk about what they did to get this site to $5,000 a month. And a lot of the mistakes along the way that they made. I mean, haven't we all made those? But they go into depth about some of those mistakes, what they've done that's worked, and some of the little secrets, I guess you could say, that have made their website stand out and helped it succeed. They also launched a second site in 2020. And so we talk about how different that site is and how different they've had to approach growing that site. Whereas with their first site, where they really were just relying on expert content in their specific niche, this second site is a much more competitive space, and one that they realized quickly that they needed to take a different approach. They needed to have great content, but they also needed to put effort into building backlinks. And so we talk about their approach to solving that problem. They hadn't really ever built backlinks before with their first site, how they went about tackling getting backlinks, and then where that site is today, what they have in mind for the future. They share a lot of great tips for new bloggers, for people who are about to start a site, who are on the fence. They talk about their mistakes they've made and what they would do if they had it to start over again. So it's a great interview to go along with their great websites, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman, and today we have Sarah and Brad Stromsdorfer. Did I get it right this time?
Yes, Stromsdorfer for me. His is easier.
Mine's Stevens, much easier.
Oh man, we should have just gone with that.
I know.
Oh, all right. Well, welcome to the podcast, you guys. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. We've been listeners of Niche Pursuits for probably 6 or 7 years, so we're so excited to be here.
Oh, good. Yeah, so same here as well. I've been listening for a long time. When did do you guys remember roughly when you started tuning into the podcast?
I think we were trying to look back on when it was. It was probably around 2014 when I was still in grad school for occupational therapy. And you probably started listening a little earlier than I did.
Yeah, at that time, we were listening to a ton of podcasts, just pretty much devouring all the content that we could get our hands on. And Niche Pursuits was definitely a really big one. Those were kind of the long tail pro days, but for many years.
Well, welcome on, you guys. Why don't you start by taking? I think there's obviously a journey here, and we're going to get into the specifics of the websites you guys have started and the success you guys have had. I think it's going to really be relatable for a lot of people today. So I'm excited about the interview. But take us back to 2014, or even circa before that. Talk us through what, kind of a bit of your journey and what has landed you guys in roughly where we're at now.
Sure. So I think it kind of started with me and, my desire to find, alternative ways to make money. And then it also kind of stemmed from, at the time, I was pretty unhappy with my 9-to-5. I had a kind of just a traditional kind of corporate job at the time. And so I started doing a lot of research on, ways to make money, entrepreneurial things that you could do. I was listening a lot to, real estate podcasts, and then also, Amazon FBA was really heating up at that time. So that was something that I was interested in. And then niche sites was also, something that I did a lot of research in. And so we actually tried all of those things. So, we bought property to do Airbnb. We did Airbnb in our own
Their
condo.
tiny second bedroom right next to us.
Yeah, we had like an 800 square foot condo, and it was.
We did it for 3 years. I don't know how.
Yeah,
Wow.
two bed, one bath, and shared bathroom with probably 1,000 different people to try to get some extra
paid the
income.
mortgage.
Yeah, and it was great, and so that worked, and so we thought about like, can we scale this up? So we bought a second single family home, but that proved to be really difficult just because it was really capital intensive. It was time intensive. There was, a lot of issues that you had to deal with real estate. And then on the Amazon side, I was really excited about that too. We did the whole process. I don't know if people are, might be familiar with it, but, to kind of decided on a product that we could import, found a producer for the product, and it was actually fanny packs. Believe it or not. And
camping fanny packs.
Yeah. And so we did that for a little while, and we were able to generate a lot of sales. But again, that business model didn't really appeal to us that much because it was super time intensive, very capital intensive. And the profit margins were just really slim at the end of the day. After Amazon takes their cut, you have shipping expenses, advertising, and all these other things. So and then so the niche side. So the first way that we got into it was I bought kind of a pre-made website that had a dozen articles, and I think it was built in WordPress, and it was in the like electronic drumming space. And so that was the very first website that I got started with. And Sarah was still in school at the time for occupational therapy, and I didn't really keep up with it. I was kind of dabbling in different things. And so that particular website ended up kind of dying off. But then Sarah, in kind of the next 6 months to a year timeframe, she graduated from occupational therapy school. And, she knew what I was up to, and we talked a lot about it. And she kind of had the idea of starting a website in the occupational therapy niche, because she was always kind of searching for things, and
a lot of treatment ideas that I couldn't find. I was in my clinicals at the end of my program, and I felt very alone with what to do with treatments, and there just wasn't really anything. And then I started my first job. I was the only occupational therapist at the facility, and there was still nothing. So I thought, well, there's this lack of content out there, and I think this would actually add value as opposed to fanny packs, which there's so many of them out there, and not really providing value. So it kind of grew. Our first website, My OT Spot, was just tailored for occupational therapists, new grads and students that really needed those treatment ideas, and just kind of easy to read educational content, kind of more list type of articles, because we're all exhausted after our clinicals and just need kind of easily digestible content. So it's kind of grown from there as our first site.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you guys, because it sounds, Brad, on your journey at that point, like you guys had dabbled a bunch, but really this site you have today, My OT Spot, is probably one of your first or second sites, right? That you really invested your time and energy in. Where were you guys at that point when Sarah, you decided you had this idea? Where were you guys in your knowledge base and your understanding? Had you had any successes with online marketing at that point?
We didn't. We were so new, and I'm so shocked that it's worked for us, because as you all know, there's just so much with SEO and content marketing, and I never took any marketing courses ever. And I was, just always in the healthcare space. But I find that I'm really interested in entrepreneurship. I found out doing the site where I was really engaged in learning of what do I do for content marketing? How do I make this engaging? And I think for a lot of people, their first and second sites really aren't necessarily viable for them. So I'm really, we always say now that it's at, the $5,000 a month mark. I can't believe we did this with our little occupational therapy website.
Yeah. I would just add that, we really didn't know, anything about, starting, first of all, starting a business, but then starting something like a website online. I was, confident in my technical abilities, just because, I've always been pretty good with computers. I don't consider myself to be like a strong coder or anything, but as we started to get into really building the site on our own, I mean, this was the first site that I actually, built from scratch on WordPress. And it was a relief to see that there, even at that time in like 2015, when we really started building it out,
there were launched in early 2016.
Yeah, so we officially launched in early 2016, but there were even at that time enough tools that could help non-coders, but still people with some technical proficiency to be able to, get a website up and running, get the hosting set up, get, payment processing set up. And we've always, over the years, when it comes to like just the technical side of things, worked with, like administrative, like technical support for usually like $50 to $100 a month. And then if we have any kind of like little bugs or glitches, I could always email them and they could help sort that stuff out. But, for the most part, for the most part, we have, just kind of, it has become like such a passion for us to try to just learn everything. And there are a lot of different aspects of the business, but I think that's where things like this podcast and other resources online have been so helpful. It's just, it kind of just turned into like our hobby between the two of us, where we
spent weekends and evenings for years.
We just were always, beyond, if we did a long road trip, we'd be listening to podcasts, we'd be, working on it together in the evenings. And yeah, so I think it's just, if people are brand new to it, just having an interest, like a real interest in the space and a passion for making it work. There's so much information out there that you can, be able to teach yourself what to do.
So you guys clearly had a good set of knowledge, from listening to Niche Pursuits and other podcasts and that sort of thing. Let's rewind to maybe the first year of your blog and of My OT Spot. Talk through what you guys focused on, what your goals were, and kind of what the first year looked like in terms of action items that you took care of.
Yeah, so the first year, we didn't know anything about keyword research or SEO, really. I think I was just writing whatever came to my mind, which some of it did stick and some of it really worked. But a lot of it, when I go back and update content, a lot of it is just stuff that, people might not even be searching for. So I wish that I had known more about keyword research starting out from the get-go. I think that is what made it take a little bit longer. It took about 2 to 3 years before it became profitable. But a lot of it was just, this is what I'm thinking about writing about now. And then we would just, I would just share it on Facebook. And I didn't do a ton of SEO that first year either. I didn't know much about Google rankings, I think, at that time.
Yeah, Sarah was pretty much writing all the content herself.
Okay, I was going to ask, so you guys wrote all the content yourselves, didn't outsource it. It sounds like with a blog like yours, it's so highly specific to your industry. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and so I think we pretty much did everything for the first couple of years, with the exception of some of those kind of like small coding glitches that we needed help with. But yeah, Sarah would pretty much write all the content. We had a goal early on to publish once a week, and we tried to stick to that. We didn't always, but at that time as well, a lot of our activities were surrounded, around social media. So primarily Facebook
and Pinterest. Those were our two.
And Pinterest. And so I think, most of our traffic early on just came from, Sarah sharing blog posts that she wrote on Facebook, and then people would, click over and that would kind of be our first little bit of traffic. And then I think also just to start trying to get the wheels turning on the site, we would reach out to, there were kind of a handful of other bloggers in this space in occupational therapy.
Very small handful.
Yeah, not many, but so Sarah reached out to them and was able to get a couple small backlinks that way. But to be honest, we didn't do a ton of backlinking, partly because we were just so new and we were we didn't really know the importance of it at the time. But I think just because Sarah really focused on good quality content and because there was just a real need in this particular niche for, the content that she was creating, that it took some time, but eventually, we were able to gain traction organically through Google. And so that over time became the biggest, source of traffic.
It's about 90% consistently now. And so that's kind of solely what I focus on now.
Yeah, I was going to mention, I think that there is, for people listening, for all of us, especially those that can really dive into keyword tools or do their research based on a lot of that SEO data, there's a tendency sometimes to maybe pick a niche that is, maybe a big opportunity from a keyword standpoint or from a search volume standpoint. But there's really something to be said for going after a niche that you're an expert in, that you're already an expert in. And, I'm guessing it doesn't sound like you did a lot of, how much search volume is there for occupational therapy, keywords, or these sorts of things, but you just relied on your expertise to push that site along. So I think that's inspiring for people to hear. A lot of us have expertise in our own industry or in something we've developed as a hobby. So that's encouraging. When did things start to turn the corner? Like, when did you make your first dollar?
That's a funny story. So I can tell you about that.
Yeah, I think it was maybe, I want to say our first year, there are only a couple of other occupational therapy bloggers, and one of them shared, I wrote a review on this one interventions kind of treatment guide.
It's like a textbook.
A textbook, it's not a required textbook, but it's one that I really recommend. So she shared my article and someone bought one and we made $5 and we were so excited. We went to this little corner, nice restaurant in Atlanta and got champagne for that $5 sale. And I think it just showed us that it was doable. And it just kind of got me really fired up just to keep going. And I think that was a big thing where we just knew, even though it took a few years before we started really profiting much at all, we just knew if we gave it a few years, the traffic was increasing over time. So we saw that we would eventually make things work. And then once we qualified for Mediavine at about the 2-year point, that's when I knew this could be a sustainable business for me where I can leave my job eventually.
So where did it turn from being something that the two of you were, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but just kind of going with it and whatnot, to where you turned and became focused more on the SEO side of things. You became focused more on the different aspects of growing a site like backlinks and SEO researched content, keyword optimized. When did that start to happen?
I think it was, do you think probably a year 2 or so, once we kept listening to a ton of podcasts and courses about SEO. So I think once we started really getting to know, probably second year.
Yeah, probably the second year in, we started taking SEO more seriously.
And then we found some other occupational therapists on Upwork and had them help us write content. So we were able to scale up better then, because after a while, when you're working in the field, it's exhausting to come home after, especially a couple years of doing it. It's doing the research when you get home is hard. So having that extra help was huge in growing it too.
Well, that's great. So fast forward to today. If you're comfortable sharing some of the stats of the website, how much it's earning a month, we've already kind of, danced around that a bit. The traffic, monthly traffic, share some of the details about where you guys are at now.
Sure. So traffic wise,
it's been a bit lower this summer with COVID, but we're still.
It's kind of between 100,000 to 120,000 page views per month. Users is usually a little bit less than that, somewhere around 80 to 90,000. And then from a just revenue standpoint, we've been doing, this is definitely our best year so far in 2021. We're averaging $5,000 a month. And so some months have been a little bit better. Some months have been a little bit slower. The summer, as Sarah mentioned, has been a little bit slower. I think people had the first opportunity to get out and get off their computers. And so,
which we encourage.
yeah, which is totally fine. But I think those are kind of the big, data points. We also have an email list that we've just slowly built over time. And there's about, I think, close to 10,000 subscribers on that email list. And then from a content perspective, we're up to, I think, 230 pieces of published content. And so, over time, early on, probably the first 2-3 years, we were really aggressively trying to add new content, write new content, outsource newly written content. And then over the past probably year and a half, we still do want to add really high quality content as much as we can, but Sarah's also shifted some of her focus to updating the existing content that now is from 2016, 2017. And so she's done a lot of research on that, and that's proven to be really helpful in bringing those old posts back to life and getting more traffic to those ones.
And so another thing growth wise that I'm really excited about now, I only have about a week left in my clinical position. So I'm really excited this is the first time I've actually been full-time on the website, or the first time I will be full-time. So I'm really ready to ramp this one up, as well as our second website. So I'm curious to see what kind of growth we can get with that.
Wow. So congratulations on the income levels, the traffic levels, and congratulations on going full time. That's man, we caught you at a good time.
I know, it's perfect timing.
That is good. Okay. How's the revenue split? You talked about Mediavine ads. So obviously you guys are monetized with an ad network, a really good one with Mediavine. I have a site on Mediavine as well. They're fantastic. Mm-hmm. And you spoke a little bit about affiliate income. I'm curious to hear more about, how does that 5,000 come through to you guys on an average monthly basis?
Sure.
Yeah. Do you do the numbers? The exact.
Yeah, I'm kind of the numbers guy, since that's my background. So Mediavine makes up about 50% of that usually. And then on the affiliate side, our biggest affiliate relationship is with a continuing education company called MedBridge. And
they're online continuing ed, which is great, especially now.
Yeah, so they offer a really good product, and they have a pretty decent, affiliate program. And so that brings in, I think, around 20% of that revenue. And then another probably 20% is from ebooks. And basically, so Sarah, early on, probably in year 2 or 3, wrote a couple of ebooks that were, specialized
treatment ideas,
on certain treatments settings in occupational therapy. And so those have been pretty steady and consistent over the past couple of years. And so that's, again, kind of 20%. And then I think that gets you to 90%. And then there's another 10. Yeah, there's another kind of the last 10% comes from a handful of other, it's affiliate income. So some of that's Amazon. And so there's, some posts that will refer people to products that are relevant to occupational therapy, like things that they would, you'd use on a daily basis to help with patients.
Or shoes, scrubs, clipboards that have medical references. Those
things
are great.
like that. And then other people in the occupational therapy space have kind of created their own products. So similar kind of to like ebooks or guides or, subscription programs that teach people how to, do better in occupational therapy. And so that's kind of the last 10% of that revenue. And the nice thing, I think I mentioned, early on, just about, some of the really slim margins in other businesses that we've tried. What's great about the niche sites is that the margins are great. I mean, it's probably 90% margin in terms of profit margin. And so, our expenses every month really just come from hosting. We have these guys called GoWP that help with the technical side of things. And then, we use stock images. And so that's probably $30 a month. And then any
occasional writers.
Yeah. And any content that Sarah hires out, that's an expense. But I think that's the thing that we really love about, niche
this
sites
model.
is just the profitability is great.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, that's great. I think a lot of people are always curious about how to move their affiliate revenue and diversify, maybe not all the way off of Amazon, but certainly adding on new affiliate partnerships like that. And again, you guys have done a really good job of finding some affiliate partners, and that continuing education idea is actually really interesting. I bet it would apply to a lot of niches, not just the occupational therapy niche. I bet there's a lot of different niches out there where there are continued and continual and secondary education that would be a good referral opportunity for different niche owners. So that's a really cool tip, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of industries require it. So I'm
Yeah.
sure they have affiliate programs.
Let's talk about your content process. I'm curious to hear. I mean, 230 articles. That's no easy. I mean, that's a lot of articles, right? So you talked about kind of how in the beginning you were just writing topics that kind of came to mind as something you thought was applicable or relevant to occupational therapists. What does your content process look like now? How do you guys find the topics? How do you write them? That sort of thing. Talk us through that.
So right now I'll use Ahrefs quite a bit. And I'll also see there's several very large Facebook groups for occupational therapists. So I'll notice what's coming up a lot in questions because there might be keywords that Ahrefs just doesn't know about yet that people are searching. So I'll kind of do a mix of those two. And then if there's a student coming in at my clinical setting, I'll ask them, hey, what's a big thing that you're looking for on Google that you can't find? So I kind of use that too, just because even if it maybe only gets 50 searches a month, it could still really help someone out. But the Ahrefs keyword research is really helpful. That's going to really help just see some different ideas that I might not have thought about for what people are searching for.
And then Sarah also just has a really good pulse, as she kind of said, like on the OT community. We have a Facebook group that how many members is it now? Maybe 3,000?
Ours has about 6,000, but I like to check out the groups that have 30, 40,000 people that are really active and engaged, especially with a lot of students, to see really what they need and what they're asking about. I think that's probably about 30% of our content, even if it's not showing up on a keyword research tool.
Just seeing what people are asking questions about, what there might be some new ideas that are out there that people are talking about. One topic lately, especially during the pandemic, has been like alternative career paths outside of working in a clinical setting. That's become kind of a more popular topic. But yeah, so that's kind of how she's the subject matter expert. She's an occupational therapist, so she really gets things going on the front end of understanding what people want to be reading about, and then from there, Sarah, I think more lately in the last couple of years, you've been hiring writers, and you've still been writing.
It's probably about
yourself.
At this point, maybe I write about 60% and hire out 40% because I'm very particular about my content quality. And OTs are great at writing, school type of papers, but they're not as great necessarily for SEO and marketing. So I find for me, it's just kind of faster to write it and format it the way I like it and the way readers like it and the way Google likes it.
I mean, just on the topic of hiring writers, I think Sarah's worked with a lot of different writers over the years, and that's one thing that I think she's found, that you really have to be patient with it, especially if you're using people there's different services out there people might be familiar with. I think Upwork has ended up being a really good source for writers for Sarah, but it can be time consuming. Not everybody's kind of getting people to understand the sort of the tone and the voice that you're looking for, even the formatting, and just getting the content to the level of quality that Sarah's expecting can be frustrating at times. And there's definitely been some content that she's paid for that just ended up not really being very good, and so she either won't use it or she'll end up having to rewrite it a lot. But I think the biggest thing is just realizing that it's still definitely worth it to take the time to find writers out there to help scale up your content, because after so many years of writing content, your time might be better spent doing other things. But just kind of being prepared to have the patience to work with, you might have to work with a lot of different people to find somebody that really, first understands your niche really well, but then also is able to actually write the, high quality content that makes sense and that's engaging, and that, your readers are really looking for.
And when you find a good one, keep them as long as you can.
Keep them happy. How when you talk about finding writers on Upwork, how important in your niche have you found it to be to maybe hire an actual occupational therapist to do your writing? versus just hiring a writer who can research and write about the topics but that might not have that expertise?
Yeah, it's extremely important. I learned, I did try hiring a couple of non-OTs. I hired a physical therapist at one point and a speech therapist. We're having similar domains. And then I hired just a standard writer. And even with there being the ability to research the topics, it's just basically impossible in this niche, I feel like, to really know what they're talking about unless they're an occupational therapist. So that is why this is a hard niche to outsource. So we say, if I ever sold it, who would buy it, and who would, they would have to have an OT run it and have to have OTs write for it, because you can certainly tell when a non-OT is writing the content, unfortunately.
It's very specialized for sure.
That's good and bad. It's difficult to scale for you, but it also makes it so that you have quite a substantive amount of expertise on your site that is hard for other people to mimic and to duplicate. So, yeah. Let's talk about any backlink strategies you guys have taken along the years with this site. We haven't talked about backlinks yet. We've talked about content. Brad, we've talked about a lot of your work on page and getting the technical side of the site, but what have you guys done for any sort of backlink strategies over the years?
We were not great with backlinking for my OT spot. And I remember Spencer had a woman on the podcast years ago, how she did no backlinking and it worked for her. And I just remember—
Very popular one. Yes. We all know that one.
I was like, if she can do it, then I could do it.
The dream, right?
I know, it's like, it just seems so doable. But so we did do a little bit of backlinking, but nothing like concrete. We did a few guest posts in the very beginning. Then we started using Haro or Help a Reporter Out, but very inconsistently. And we did get a few backlinks from them, but it just was not— I really wish we would have earlier had an actual project or had an actual idea of what we needed to do for links. And I wish I knew how important it was. And I think it would have scaled us up a lot faster if we knew that we should have been doing it a lot more consistently.
When did you guys start? You talked about Haro, you talked about guest posts. Is it something that, you've since gone on to build more backlinks, or have you really just kind of relied on a few links here, a few links there, and grown the site based on the other aspects, the other attributes of it?
Yeah, I think it's never— backlinking with my OT spot has never been like a huge, I guess, part of our day-to-day focus. I think more so, our primary focus is on, quality content. At least that's true for my OT spot. Tamborossi is a different story because
our second site that we can go into.
Yeah, our second website we can talk a little bit about. But we started that in April 2020, and we quickly realized that backlinking was going to be a much more important of our, part of our just regular ongoing work and our strategy to be able to, get people to the website. So
with bigger niches, it's mandatory. I feel, that you have to do backlinking and you have to get that going sooner than later.
So let's see, April 2020. So we've got our pandemic site here. I imagine.
Yes, it's really
this is the lockdown site. This is the Netflix or build a new site question mark here, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah, it's one or the other.
We're gonna watch Netflix for the month, or we're gonna build a new site. So well, before we transition to that site, because I want to talk about that site because you guys have some interesting parallels and observations. What is next for my OT spot? What are your goals and plans? And I mean, we're hitting you at a really interesting time because you have this milestone revenue that you've accomplished, and but at the same time, Sarah, you're going full time. Well, you're leaving your full time job, I presume, going full time into the websites. But what are your goals going forward with this? What are your plans for the site?
I'm just really curious. Like, once we hit this 5,000 mark, it just felt so huge, and we didn't think we would get this far since it's a smaller niche, and there's a lot fewer occupational therapists than there are general public that are using Google. So I'm curious to see if I can publish, 2 to 3 times the normal amount that I was, how high I can grow it. We're having our first child next March, so it would be great to have just, a little bit extra income stability with that. But it's interesting since it's a smaller niche, we just don't know how much higher we can get it without doing a membership site, which is very time intensive. it's very profitable with my competitors, but I like the really passive aspect of it. So I'm trying to just kind of see what we can do without doing membership sites or very large courses.
Yeah, I think, for us, we kind of, people have their different mindsets when it comes to, building websites and entrepreneurship. I know there's a lot of people that are really have huge aspirations as far as, how much money that they want to try to make with their websites. They want to try to grow to be 6 figures a month, which obviously that, of course would be amazing. But I think with My OT Spot, that's probably not realistic, especially with this niche. And so I think, our mindset with it is a little bit different. It's one where we view it as, it's something that we view that the website, between the content and all the organic backlinks and all the organic, traffic, and just the reputation and the brand name that, we have with the website is solid. And we believe that it's really built on a solid foundation. So that just is valuable from a standpoint of being, reliable. And, we know that we're going to get a certain amount of traffic every month. And we know that based on, however many views that is, it's a certain amount of ad revenue, a certain amount of, affiliate revenue. And so I think that's what's most important. There are a lot of people, especially in the, make money online and kind of like niche website space, that have really high aspirations. But I think, for us, it's really about, when it comes down to it, kind of a tool to enable a, lifestyle that's really desirable for Sarah, especially now that, as she mentioned, she's able to, leave her full-time position in a clinical setting and be able to just focus on, things that are more important to her, having less stress in life. And so I think that's kind of the long-term way that we're viewing the website. It's just as a reliable source of income for our family.
Well, congratulations on the upcoming arrival. That's wonderful. So even more impetus to kind of transition, your lifestyle and let this website work for you. That's wonderful. Let's speaking of transition, let's talk about the second site. Let's transition to this second site you guys started. Vastly different niche, and obviously you've talked about the different challenges, or you hinted at the different challenges that are before you in this one. What's the you mentioned the new site? What space is it in, and what kind of readers is it targeting?
Yeah, so our second niche, it is very different from occupational therapy. It's tamborowski.com, which is it's the smallest river in the world, kind of a play on Amazon being the largest river and very kind of consumerist. It's all about sustainability, which I've been passionate about for years and love talking about with everyone, especially now with how things are going.
Yeah, so it's really in the as Sarah mentioned, sustainability and environmentalism, kind of just conservation, giving people different product ideas,
lifestyle tips to consume less.
Yeah, that just ultimately, may be less harmful to the environment. And, I think that it's kind of two parts with respect to, climate change and global warming. There's kind of the personal side of things where I think Sarah is really passionate about finding products that, again, are just kind of like less harmful, less impactful, better for the environment, more, trying to reuse things and consume less as much as possible. And then the other side of it that we're, I think, going to try to build out as well is just more content around sustainable technology and energy, and
holding companies accountable as well, because that's a huge. We've learned a lot in this space now that it's just a lot of it goes on the companies, and the consumer can't be the only ones that are responsible for making these changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what's the, how's it going so far? You guys are, I guess, at recording here, somewhere around 1.5 years in or so. So, kind of early days, but talk us through how it's going so far and what you've done.
Well, it's been going okay. We've been, I think, pretty good and consistent with our creating content. And so this is a niche that's a little bit easier to find.
Found a great writer who's majored in sustainability.
There's more, there's just a way bigger niche. So that's helpful to be able to find more writers. So we have about 100 pieces of content, and the 1 year mark was April. And so we have a lot of content. It's definitely been much slower, I think, to ramp up from a traffic perspective.
Despite doing keyword research with the low competition.
Yeah, I think it's just, there's just, it's a lot of competition in this niche. And so our traffic, I think, is in, the 1,000 to 5,000 page views per month. And
it is growing monthly.
It's growing. I mean, it's very slow but steady. We're we're trying to be patient with it, and because we know that at a certain point it will really start to tick off, and that virtuous cycle will start to kick in, where the more page views you get, the more organic results that you can show up for in Google, and so that's kind of the stage we're at. From the biggest thing I think we learned from My IT Spot is just that building a website can take a long time. So you really have to be patient with it. Even if we're not seeing, some of the results that you might hear about in 6 months, people are making thousands of dollars. And I know that's all possible, but in this particular niche that we're getting into, we know that it's something that, we care a lot about, and we want to just stick with it for the long term. So for us, if it takes a year, 2 years, 5 years, however long it takes, I think we're willing to just stick it out and keep working on it. And we know that it's right now, it can be sometimes a little discouraging because the traffic numbers are low. But again, I think it's just knowing that that we can be successful from working with My IT Spot, and just knowing that it can take a long time to really get that traction.
You just have to be patient.
Yeah,
and it's hard in our society to be patient with things.
Exactly.
Well, and the devil's advocate, actually, I mean, first off, a lot's changed in SEO since 2016 when you started My OT Spot. It's a vastly different environment, and I think we saw it firsthand with Spencer's owntheyard.com case study and project that I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I feel like it was between the 18 and 24 month mark before he started actually seeing, some real solid growth. And, previously it would take sites 6 months to come out of the sandbox and really, start generating a lot of revenue. And then it started taking 12 months. And I mean, I don't have any data on hand, but it sure feels like it's definitely longer than 12 months, not to start ranking, but to start getting that real traction that you talked about. And so, the devil's advocate says maybe you guys are very close in terms of a normal time frame for websites to get going in terms of sustainable traffic in today's environment.
That makes me feel better because, you have that 6 month mark in your head of, oh, that's how long Google takes. And it does seem definitely longer now.
Well, you talked about it's a more competitive niche than your occupational therapy one. What are some of the strategies you guys are trying to go after to tackle this competitiveness? What are you doing differently with your sustainability site to try to rank and outrank some of the more competitive terms?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, the most important thing to us is just the quality of the content. And so, we're using a lot of the same strategies that, we've used on My OT Spot, just kind of keeping a pulse on, what's going on in the industry. But then also, I think a lot of our content is oriented around, evergreen topics that aren't necessarily, news oriented, but things that will, stick around and be relevant for years to come. But I think also
it's almost all keyword research as well from the get-go, which we didn't do.
A lot of keyword research. And then I think a really big part of our strategy now, just as far as backlinking goes, is outsourcing backlinking. Because I mean, as you kind of heard, it's not something that we, with My OT Spot, took very seriously. We didn't spend a ton of time on it. We knew that it was important, but I think we just
consistency.
It was hard for us to be consistent. We didn't really love doing it. I know a lot of people struggle with it. It can be tedious, but it's, one of those things where we know we're good at content. We're good with, our content process and really getting the content to a high level of quality, that we just realize that, backlinks, it is super important just with how competitive it is, but it's not something that we wanted to be managing on our own time. So that's something that we've, started outsourcing in the past kind of year.
And that's really helped us. Just having it regularly done every month has been, I think, a game changer, even though we're seeing small traffic increments. We were seeing nothing when we were just doing Haro. So that's been really great. And I think that's something we'll continue doing as well.
Well, okay, talk us through how you decided on a backlink company to work with. What some of the things that were important to you? What type of backlinks you're building? I'm sure everyone would be really curious to know.
Yeah, so we actually got an email from Spencer's list with a company called Stand Ventures, and I started researching them myself before because I was telling Brad, we need to do something about this backlinking. We need to do it, and we're not going to do it. So I saw that they had pretty good feedback and that they were white hat. That was really important to me, that it was all going to be white hat, so I wouldn't get penalized ever. So we started using them a few months ago, and they basically reach out to other sites with different domain authorities. So I think right now we're doing one domain authority of maybe 20, one of 30, 40, and maybe, and there's a couple extra that are in the 20 to 30 domain authority range, targeting, they target our specific, just a few articles per month that have potential to rank. And that's really helpful that it's because before with my OT spot, we would just share our main link. We wouldn't do individual article backlinking. So they've been doing that outreach for us, and we've been seeing results every month. They also, which is helpful, they send kind of a PDF package of the growth that our posts are getting. And just seeing that results, I'm like, okay, backlinking, it is very important. We need to keep doing this. And I think,
and with that, we were able to there's one page in particular, we were able to get to a number one ranking on the first page of Google. And so I think that's, by far probably our biggest traffic generator. And so I think, what we like as well about working with them is that the backlinks are all sort of guest post oriented, and they're really great to work with because they will, come up with a list of ideas for websites that we can partner with, and we can kind of review it. And sometimes we say, I don't think this really fits with, our niche maybe sometimes, or this is, it could be like perfect, like this would be great. We'd love to be able to work with this particular site. And so we can give feedback on that front, and then they'll handle the communications, and sometimes, we don't hear back, and sometimes it might not end up working out, but they always are really good about following up. I think that's been the biggest thing. It can be hard to find they
always follow up immediately.
In any aspect of life, whether it's business or personal or anything, it's just people don't always have very good follow-up, especially when it comes to emails. And so that's one thing that we really appreciate, is that they have, they can take our feedback and run with it. And then even if, there might be a site that changes their mind or whatever, they're always following up with us
another URL.
To find another one and to make it work. And that's just been huge, because that's the kind of stuff where we need the accountability to be able to continually build links. Because if we were to do it on our own, we would, it wouldn't happen.
Because with content
Well, I think it's fascinating to see that you guys have succeeded on your first site without much of a backlink focus, but yet have been so quick to identify the competitiveness of this niche on your new site, and then to make a decision to go out and solve that problem. That's it's easy to get in the trap. I'll say trap because it sounds like it would be a trap for you guys to approach this second site in the exact same way that you approached your first site, which is, we've relied on great content and whatnot, but you've analyzed this site and seen that it's a much more competitive niche, and then tackled it with a strategy that should help bring you guys on par with some of the more competitive people in your niche, which is a backlink process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that it really boils down to, three things to ultimately, I think, be successful with websites. And, that first thing is having really good quality content. And so I think we've got our process down for that.
But again, you can have the quality content, but if no one's seeing it,
it's quality content. And then it's you can't just write stuff and then let it sit out there in the ether on the internet and expect people to see it. You've got to figure out ways to get that content in front of people. And there's, a ton of different ways, obviously, to do that. There's social media, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter. There's
not really Pinterest.
Not really Pinterest anymore, but email list, and you can tell people on the street that you see about your website. You got to have a means of getting eyeballs to your website. And so that's, the second part. The third part, obviously, that we've talked about is just being patient and giving it time. So we've got the content covered, and we have the patience to make it work, but we really are trying to dial in and build up our process around getting users in front of the website. And so backlinking, I think, is just such a huge part of that, the puzzle for us to get the second website to work.
It's great. It's good advice. It's good feedback too. Let's kind of circle the wagons here. What would you say are some of the biggest mistakes that you guys have made along the way? Obviously, this is geared towards everyone listening who's on the journey as well. What are some maybe a mistake you made that you learned from that you can share with everybody?
I think I would have loved to have known more, and I can't go back. I would have loved to research more ahead of time about keyword research and backlinking and SEO instead of just spending almost 2 years just throwing content out there and not knowing. But I think now, there's so much helpful information on the internet to learn this ahead of time. It's really helpful to know as much as you can before you get started, or kind of while you're getting started. Just really focus on maybe even I didn't do a course ever, and I think if we would have done one of the courses we've done since, that we would be more on the right track earlier.
Yeah, I think that we've tried to monetize in different ways that have not been successful at all. I mean, for example, we tried to sell physical products on the site, like
with certain niches, they're just not buying.
Yeah, t-shirts and totes and handbags and things like that. But that it's basically some of the products are still up, but it's really been almost like zero, nothing. We should probably just take those
I think
things
just knowing
down,
your audience of what, they're not looking to buy things when they're looking for occupational.
Yeah, knowing your audience, but also I think a big part of it is just not being afraid to try things. For us, like, we've tried a lot of different things. We've tried a lot of different writers. We've tried a lot of different ways to monetize that haven't always worked, but just being willing to give it a shot. I think as long as it's not, too high risk of, an endeavor financially, I wouldn't. I think that, for us from a standpoint of just experimenting with the website, trying different plugins, even, for example. I think one of the big things that's helped our site on My OT Spot is just having a page that shows all of the content for the website just in one place, because we didn't really have a good way for people
kind of a search tool.
Yeah, we didn't have a great way for people to browse content, but just experimenting with different things at an incremental level. I think we've seen some stories of people that have done complete site redesign, and that has just been awful for them, because it can really hurt you if you're trying to do too many things that are too big all at once. But I think our way of just trying to do small things that aren't too risky and just doing incremental improvements. Some things are just not going to work at all, but other things that work, you can really figure that out and keep going on those things and keep growing.
And one thing I always tell people whenever they're new or interested in starting a website is just to not give up, because I've talked to so many people in whether it's a therapy space or they're interested in other niches, and they start the websites and they even make a couple articles and they just give up. I see that time and time again. And I just tell people, if you really are interested in this, you have to keep going.
Look, so I'm curious, looking back at the articles right now on My OT Spot that are ranking, that are bringing in the majority of the traffic. Were these articles that you wrote without a keyword strategy? Were they articles that you talked about how heavily researched? Some of them were in Ahrefs, and when you went and looked, others that you've written have been really just very topically relevant, that you don't even care about the search volume, but now from different Facebook groups and stuff that they're relevant. Like your top articles, which buckets do they fall into?
A lot of them are articles that weren't on keyword research tools, a lot of treatment ideas. So with occupational therapy, working with adults with different deficit areas, if they have a deficit in balance or endurance or strength, just little functional ways. We focus a lot on self-care and retraining functionally. So just articles on different deficit areas functionally have done really well. And so we kind of try to keep that going too whenever I can think of new intervention ideas. And on Google, you just won't see that if you're searching for occupational therapy treatments. There's a lot of pediatric content, but there weren't really any keywords for adult-based treatment ideas. So I still think that's really interesting that really worked out.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's I think in many ways, part of your success might actually be because you didn't understand some of the tools as well in the beginning, which allowed you to write about topics that others weren't writing about because they were using the very tools and you were using other knowledge sets to produce content. So I could be wrong, but I was curious about that. And it does sound like at least some of the articles you guys have that are really successful actually don't even really come from a classic keyword research approach.
Yeah, I think that could be right. And maybe now I would switch, kind of advise people to encourage not only to use keyword research tools, but also write about what you think people need for your niche. And I think that's always going to be helpful anyway, especially if it's not out there on Google. It would be a lot more helpful for your readers.
And that probably comes with time as well. I think early on, the keyword tools are super helpful to just get an understanding of, from a traffic perspective, what are good topics to go after. But I do think, since we've been doing it longer, we might have a better feel for, something that might show up in a keyword tool that, we just knowing the niche and knowing the content that's out there and knowing our content, just knowing that might not really be something good that, to go after. And then on the other hand, there might be a topic in mind that Sarah has that doesn't show up anywhere on the keyword, report, but just she knows by knowing the niche and knowing what's out there that is something valuable, or at least it's something that's worth trying to go after.
Putting out there.
Right. Oh, it's just so interesting. So what's so for people who are on the fence about starting a site, for the segment of the audience that's listening that hasn't started a site yet, is in the stage of listening, as you guys were from 2014 or so to 2016 or so, but is in the stage of learning, what would you say, what would you recommend to them? What would be some advice you'd share with those people who haven't started a site yet?
Oh, there's so much.
We always, anytime we get, friends or family that show even the slightest bit of interest in starting a website,
we direct them to the resources.
Yeah, we'll just both start talking their ear off because we have learned so much. But I think it would just be, I think the most important thing is to really, understand that this can work for just normal
for
people.
Any niche, really.
For any niche, we're not like some huge, like I said before, we're not doing like 6 figures a month or anything like that. We're just at a point of revenue and income that is realistic, that's sustainable and reliable. And so I think that's the first thing, because I think the hardest thing that we've seen for people getting into this niche of making websites is not really partly believing that this can work, or just being skeptical of like the things that you hear online, that you hear about all these success stories, but you don't always hear about the failures, because there certainly are failures. But I think that knowing that it is possible to make this work and to make this be successful to a realistic degree is just something that's so important, because with that belief that it can work, if I just put in the time and put in the effort and just have patience, that knowing it can take years to get it to work, that will keep your enthusiasm and your drive and your passion for learning about all the different aspects of building websites, because there are a lot of different parts to it, from SEO to hiring writers and site speed and marketing and all these things. I think just having a belief that it can work, I think helps drive your enthusiasm for learning more and more.
And another thing, I think you should be pretty passionate about what you're going to be starting a website about, unless you plan on just outsourcing everything right away, because you're going to be immersed in that topic. And if it's something like electric drum or electronic drum sets, that would be something I wouldn't, I would give up on right away. But if it's something you're passionate about, even if it's something like needlepoint and you love to write about it, I think that really helps just to have a topic that you enjoy, whether it's, cooking or crafting, or your not clinical expertise, but your career expertise. Something that you could stick with for years, because it can take years to get traction at times.
I probably would agree. I think that is, for us, I think that's the most important, is knowing that this is a topic that you can, especially, it's a topic that you really are passionate about, that you could see yourself writing about and talking about and thinking
For
about
years.
a lot for years to come. Especially kind of as we've discussed, it just over time, it does get harder and harder. It's a little bit harder now than it was 5 years ago, and it's going to be a little bit harder most likely 5 years from now, and so on and so on. And so I do think that's most important. I think it also is important to consider, the competitiveness of the niche. You obviously don't want to go for something that's just way too competitive. Like you could, but you just have to kind of be realistic that if
people
you're
still can crack into those really.
If you're trying to go into hosting services, or if you're really
Travel
into
blogs.
fitness or travel blogging, just know that those are going to be way more competitive,
and you'll just have to put in more work.
But I do think that's I do think the level of competitiveness of the niche is probably secondary to your level of passion and enthusiasm for the niche.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining today and for sharing your journey, both with My OT blog, but just in My OT spot. Sorry, added the word blog to the end of it. But just sharing your journey as you guys have navigated through growing that site and then starting a second site. And again, congratulations on your success. These types of interviews are great for so many people listening that are maybe on the fence about starting a site, maybe in their first year of starting a site, maybe trudging along at that spot right before you guys experience the breakthrough. And it's a great source of encouragement, along with being really practical, a lot of how-to tips. And so thanks for joining us, and appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good one.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.